They called us primitive, a backwater species clawing its way out of its own mud. To them, Earth was just another blue dot barely worth the trouble of colonizing. That was their first mistake. The second was thinking we would forget. I was there the day it all began. Not the day the fleet appeared, no. That day came much later. I mean the day the fires first burned. I was 15, skin wrapped in ash, lungs full of smoke, holding my father's severed dog tags like they meant something in a world that didn't respect the dead. The Salkari came down from the sky in ships shaped like daggers, pierced our atmosphere, and began their cleansing. No warning, no mercy. They took cities, lives, and whatever they couldn't use, they turned to glass. But they didn't kill us all. They left survivors. Always do. It's easier to break a species when you leave some of it alive to remember. That's the third mistake. They taught us what fear looked like. We returned the favor with silence. For 50 years, Earth said nothing. We joined their council, took their scraps, accepted their rules. We smiled when they called us lesser. Took their vaccines, their tech, their translators, and every single bite they gave us. We used to build one thing: vengeance. They thought Earth had gone silent because we were afraid. No, we were busy. It was Admiral Rowan who gave the order. Not a politician, not a diplomat, a soldier, a man born in the ash fields of old Chicago, whose mother died under Salkari boots. He built the Dark Matter Fleet in shadows, 12 ships, each the size of a continent, invisible to sensors, untraceable by any known tech. Fueled by a substance the Council had banned for fear of what it could do. That didn't stop us. Fear was a luxury we left behind. The galaxy's empires thought they owned us, but Earth was never theirs. We were just waiting for the right silence. The day the fleet rose, I was stationed at Outpost Vira 6, far beyond Saturn's orbit. I watched the screen turn black. Not static, not glitch. Black. It swallowed the stars like a mouth with no bottom. That's when I knew. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. The first to see it was the Adrani ambassador. He stood in the observation deck aboard the Council's high seat, some floating gold ring pretending to be holy. He laughed. "A human stunt," he called it. "Impressive light show." Then the light around him bent, warped, and his skin peeled off in ribbons as the room collapsed into itself. That wasn't a weapon. That was just presence. The fleet didn't even fire. They didn't need to. Across the galaxy, trillions tuned in to watch Earth's public execution. That's what they thought was coming. What they got instead was silence, followed by one broadcast. Admiral Rowan appeared. No uniform, no medals, just his father's old jacket and eyes that hadn't forgotten. He looked straight into the feed and said one word. Enough. That was it. No threats, no war cries, just enough. And the galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, went still. Empires that ruled for millennia froze. Species that harvested black holes for sport hesitated. Even the Xylari, who communicated only through psionic resonance and called us the apes who speak, stopped broadcasting for 7 minutes. The last time they went silent, a sun exploded. Because the Dark Matter Fleet wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. We weren't asking for a seat at the table anymore. We were flipping the damn table over. Some say we went too far, that we became what we hated. Maybe they're right. But I remember the ash. I remember my father. I remember the children pulled from shelters only to be thrown into orbit for genetic sampling. So no, I don't want peace. I want memory. And memory, like vengeance, has weight. Now I serve aboard Oblivion 1, flagship of the fleet. We don't dock. We don't refuel. We exist. And the galaxy? The galaxy watches, waiting to see if we speak again. They thought we wouldn't strike first. The galaxy had always seen us as reactive, emotional, predictable, the kind of species that would roar in anger, make bold declarations, then eventually cave once someone pointed a bigger gun. That was before they realized our gun had no safety and no trigger, just intent. We didn't start the war, we ended the patience. It was 36 hours after Admiral Rowan's single-word broadcast, enough that the first retaliation came, and it wasn't from us. The Zanari Empire, arrogant bastards with gold-plated moons and slave worlds for sport, fired a warning shot toward our Mars installations. They thought it was just a message, something to show the rest of the Council that humans could still be disciplined. The projectile never landed. Oblivion 2, silent as death, blinked into orbit and folded the space around the missile. One moment it was streaking toward our dome cities. The next, it vanished. Not destroyed, erased, wiped clean like chalk from a board. The Zanari didn't understand what they'd just witnessed. They still used plasma coils and kinetic railguns. The concept of folding matter into zero-state oblivion hadn't even reached their science academies. But we weren't using their science anymore. We weren't asking for approval. We'd left civilized warfare behind. Rowan didn't issue a reply. He didn't need to. The next move was mine. I wasn't supposed to lead anything. When I enlisted, I just wanted a uniform and a chance to bleed for something that mattered. No medals, no strategy, no command. I didn't care about power, just purpose. But the fleet doesn't promote based on politics. We promote based on memory. My mission was to lead Silent Vow, the 6th ship in the fleet, on a recon and demonstration run to the Arcturon cluster, where 5 Council-aligned species had built a joint military facility, the same facility where they trained defensive forces that specialized in pacifying non-compliant species. Earth was their test subject once. I figured they wouldn't mind if we ran a few tests of our own. The jump took less than a breath. Inside the dark matter core, time doesn't mean much. It folds around you like skin. One moment you're above Saturn's rings. The next you're staring down a station wrapped in solar cannons and arrogance. The Arcturon complex floated like a trophy in the void, boasting flags from 5 empires, and not one of them flew ours. I sent no hails, no warnings. I just opened the broadcast channel and let them see my face. Today, I said. You remember why humans bury their dead with clenched fists? Then we cut the signal and dropped the veil. The veil is what they call the fleet's masking field, though mask is the wrong word. It doesn't hide us. It erases us from perception. Not just sensors, but minds. No species, not even psionics, could detect us while the veil held. It was more like we didn't exist. But when it dropped, the galaxy felt it. There were no sirens on Arcturon. They never got the chance to scream. The gravity around their station staggered, not increased, just broke. Men and machines floated sideways, diagonal, upside down, their instincts failing as their feet left the ground in places that still had gravity. One of their officers fired a pulse cannon at the hull of Silent Vow. It never reached us. It stopped mid-flight, hung in the vacuum, and then folded into a flat circle before blinking out. Seconds later, their primary generator began to hum. We hadn't touched it. That was the beauty of dark matter engineering. We didn't attack infrastructure. We corrupted reality around it. By the time the reactor imploded inward, clean, surgical, no radiation, we were already gone. Back aboard the fleet, morale was cold and steady. No cheers, no celebration. There's no joy in our war, just necessity. Even the youngest recruits didn't smile after our first strike. That's what separates us from them. To them, war was a game. To us, it was a ledger. A week later, the Council officially labeled humanity as a rogue species. It meant nothing. Labels don't scare soldiers who were raised in ash. If anything, it confirmed what we already knew. The galaxy didn't want peace with us. It wanted us manageable, contained, predictable. And now that we weren't, we were marked. Rowan stood before the fleet's council, 7 commanders, including me, standing in a dark hall with stars spinning slow behind glass. No fancy chairs, no holograms, just real people with real blood in their pasts. "The next move?" Commander Vale asked. He was the oldest among us, built like a slab of iron with a voice like broken gravel, lost 2 daughters during the Salkari harvests. Never talks about them, but he doesn't have to. He's the kind of man whose silence says more than most speeches. Rowan folded his arms. "We cripple their communication lattice." I nodded before anyone else. The galaxy was already turning on itself. Rumors, fear, back-channel meetings. They couldn't risk waiting too long to respond. If we silenced their interstellar comms, it would delay their ability to coordinate. It wouldn't just cause panic. It would breed paranoia. The vote was unanimous. The mission was mine again. The communication relay we targeted was in the Crythian Wedge, a dense region of space where energy pulses travel faster through synthetic wormholes. The station, Voice of Unity, was the backbone of the galactic lattice. Take it down, and billions of systems go dark. We arrived without warning. Again, no alarms, no standoff. The crew aboard Silent Vow was trained not for combat, but for surgical enforcement. We didn't need to fire weapons. We deployed a single black spire, a spike forged from compressed dark matter that bent signal frequencies into static. It embedded itself into the station's core relay and spread like ink in water. Within 4 minutes, over 70% of the Council's outer systems went blind. They couldn't communicate, couldn't request aid, couldn't trace us. The most advanced civilization cluster in the known galaxy had been reduced to whispers and guesswork. Empires that hadn't fought in centuries turned inward, unsure if the silence was from betrayal or attack. And Earth? We watched. But not everyone celebrated. Among us were the broken, men who remembered too much, too clearly. Lieutenant Baran, my second in command, came from the North African enclaves, where the Council once tested bioweapons on unregistered human populations. He rarely spoke. But one night, after the relay sabotage, he stood outside the observation bay, staring at the stars. "I used to believe we'd reclaim something," he muttered. "Not just survive, rebuild. Be more than vengeance." I joined him, arms crossed, my eyes following a slow-rotating moon. "We were never given that option." Baron shook his head. "Maybe not. But if we keep going like this, what will we be when it's done?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe vengeance was the answer. The real test came days later. The Zal Empire, long, silent, self-proclaimed peacekeepers, broadcast a public challenge, a duel. Their warlord demanded a single ship from Earth meet him in ritual combat. No fleets, no sabotage, just ship versus ship, commander versus commander. A last chance for honor, they called it. It was bait. They wanted to make a spectacle of defeating one of our fleet, to restore morale across the Council systems and prove humanity could bleed. Rowan approved it without hesitation, and he chose me to answer. I won't lie, I didn't feel brave. I felt ready. The Zal ship, Valor's Crown, was a behemoth, armed to the teeth, wrapped in shields that shimmered like ocean waves. Their warlord, a towering brute named Kroshtal, had never lost a duel. He called me a child in his first message. I didn't reply. I just brought Silent Vow forward. We didn't cloak, we didn't fire first. We waited. Kroshtal unleashed plasma bursts, kinetic torpedoes, even gravity mines. All of it aimed to crush or pierce, primitive tools. Pretty, loud, but predictable. And I knew something he didn't. The Silent Vow wasn't a ship. It was a refusal to be forgotten, a refusal to die quietly, a refusal to play by the galaxy's rules. We didn't counter his shots. We folded them. Not with shields, but with absence. We opened a rift just in front of our hull, a slice of nothingness that absorbed every shot into a nowhere space we hadn't even fully mapped. That was the gamble. If it failed, we died. It didn't fail. And then I spoke, first time since arrival. My turn. We fired a single lance of compressed void, no explosion, no light. It passed through Valor's crown like a whisper, and it left a hole that refused to close. Not in the ship, in space itself. The Zal ship collapsed, not exploded, not shredded, just vanished section by section until even Kroshtal's final scream was swallowed by silence. We didn't broadcast victory. We just left. After that, the galaxy started whispering a new name for us, Extinction Class. We were no longer just humans, no longer refugees or rebels or survivors. We were a force that could not be negotiated with. And still, we had not declared war. Because we didn't need to. War had already been declared on us. We were simply finishing what they started. The galaxy had finally stopped laughing, but it hadn't stopped scheming. You don't rule thousands of systems for millennia by folding at the first sign of a threat. No. You adapt, you twist, you find weaknesses, and if you can't beat your enemy from the outside, you look for a way in. That's where Aaron Dask came in. Human, born in the Martian cryo-slums. Once a soldier. Now a name spat like poison across every deck of the dark matter fleet. We don't call him by rank anymore, not even by name if we can help it. We just call him the Defector. Because he didn't just betray his post, he tried to sell humanity back into chains. I found out about Dask during a routine systems check on Oblivion 1. One of our data crawlers, a synthetic interface designed to sniff council activity across splinter networks, pinged something strange, a string of code, human syntax, buried in a Zal comms relay. At first I thought it was a ghost, maybe some old scavenged tech echoing back. But when I decrypted the payload, what I saw made my blood run cold. A video. Dask, standing before the council. No shackles, no chains, just calm, and treason spilling from his mouth. Humanity is fractured, he told them. The fleet does not speak for Earth. Not all of us want this war. Give me asylum, and I'll give you the coordinates to every ship in the fleet. They didn't even ask for proof. He gave them Silent Vow's location first. That was personal. I brought the data to Rowan in person. He didn't flinch, just sat there, staring out the viewport, like he'd known something like this was coming. He was one of yours, I said. Rowan nodded. He was a boy when I recruited him, barely out of ration lines, sharp mind, no spine. Why didn't we kill him sooner? Because we're not executioners, he said. I bit back the response that burned on my tongue. Because that was the thing about Rowan. He didn't operate from rage, not like the rest of us. His vengeance wasn't loud or raw. It was cold, measured. And it made him dangerous. Too dangerous for comfort, sometimes. He gave them more than our positions, I said. He told them about the Veil, our blind jump protocols. He sold out every advantage we had. Rowan finally turned to me. Then we take them all away. The council moved fast. Within days, they rallied what was left of their splintered fleets. Kroshtal's death had shaken the empires, but not broken them, and Dask? They used him as a mouthpiece, a human face to soothe the rest of the galaxy, a voice of reason claiming the dark matter fleet was a rogue element, a terrorist faction, unrepresentative of Earth's true values. They pushed the lie hard, offered safe passage to humans willing to defect, claimed they'd rebuild Earth into a peaceful civilization again, one that could rejoin the galactic community. It almost worked. Small colonies on the fringe started to waver. old, battered outposts unsure of where the power now lay. The Council was playing the long game, divide us, question us, and bleed us without drawing a blade. Rowan ordered a response, not a speech, not a threat, an example. The defector had been moved to the Sindrak Citadel, a mobile fortress orbiting the gas giant Volnex, a place layered in shields, cloaked in defensive swarms, wrapped in politics. It wasn't just a stronghold. It was a statement. No one had ever attacked it. Until us. This time Rowan didn't send Silent Vow. He sent me aboard Oblivion 1, with full command authority and one directive: bring him back alive, or make him disappear so completely no one even thinks about following his example. I picked the latter before we even jumped. We entered the Volnex system under full veil, our ship silent, pressureless, hidden even from gravitational distortion scans. The Sindrak Citadel spun slow above the storm-churned clouds, like some bloated parasite waiting for prey. We didn't need to board. We didn't need to fire. We used the Citadel's own mass to tear it apart. I deployed a black nail, a device no bigger than a satellite dish, launched from our hull into the gravity well beneath the fortress. Once embedded, it triggered a localized dark fold, not enough to implode the station, but enough to invert its internal structure. What that meant in practical terms? Rooms ended where walls began. Hallways turned inside out. Gravity reversed, folded, then snapped like bone. Oxygen escaped through seams that hadn't existed an hour before. The station began to die. I opened a comm line. No visuals, just voice. Aaron Dask, you have 10 seconds to say anything worth remembering. Static. Then his voice, shaking, breathless but defiant. You think this ends with me? No, I said. It ends because of you. Then we cut the feed. The last scan showed his life signs scrambling as the Citadel collapsed inward. No explosion, no flare, just silence. Perfect silence. The message was clear. You betray Earth. You die in a place no one will mourn you. But not everyone took it that way. The Council spun the destruction of the Citadel as a war crime, claimed we'd attacked a diplomatic structure, murdered civilians. Suddenly their propaganda wasn't just working on outsiders, it started poisoning minds inside our own species. That's when we got the message. Earth Command, the remnants of the old planetary leadership that had been hiding in bunkers beneath Antarctica for decades, sent us a broadcast. They wanted a meeting. Rowan wasn't surprised. They see the tide turning. Now they want to rejoin the game. But why now? I asked. We don't need them. Rowan looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw doubt in his eyes. They're not trying to help, he said. They're trying to stop us. We jumped to the designated coordinates, a derelict station orbiting the edge of the Sirius Drift, abandoned, cold, perfect for a quiet negotiation. They came aboard unarmed. 3 of them. 2 men, 1 woman. Faces I recognized from old news feeds, before the Salkari purges, before the fires. The lead negotiator stepped forward. We want peace. Rowan said nothing. I stepped forward instead. You had your chance. We weren't prepared then. We are now. The galaxy doesn't want you to win. I leaned in, close enough to smell the synthetic polish on his coat. Good. The man tried to stay calm, but his voice cracked. You'll doom all of us. Rowan finally spoke. No. You doomed us when you folded to them, when you let Earth burn so you could stay in power. We're just taking back what was stolen. The woman stepped in. There's still a chance for unity. Rowan's hand went up. No, there isn't. He turned to me. End this. I didn't ask what he meant. I just drew my sidearm and fired once, not to kill, but to wound. The negotiator fell to the floor, screaming, leg shredded. The message was clear. We weren't playing politics anymore. They left, bleeding and silent, a warning to all others. There would be no return to the old Earth. There would only be the Earth that remembered. The weeks that followed were chaos. Council systems rioted. Military fleets defected. One species, the Varen, even offered full surrender, asking only to be spared extinction. Rowan declined the meeting. "We don't want their surrender," he said. "We want their silence." And we were getting it. Planet by planet, system by system, the galaxy began to shut up and listen, not to our words, but to our presence. They stopped broadcasting threats, stopped organizing coalitions, even stopped trading with each other. They were afraid of being seen aligning with the wrong side. We hadn't fired a shot in weeks, and yet our influence spread faster than any invasion. That's what fear does. It doesn't ask permission. It moves in. But fear also brings questions. Dissent. Not from the enemy, from within. Baron, again, stood outside the observation deck one night, watching the fleet drift in perfect, chilling silence. "I keep waiting to feel something," he said. "What do you mean?" "Satisfaction, closure, relief. But all I feel is empty." I lit a smoke and handed him one. "You thought justice would heal you?" He laughed bitterly. "Didn't you?" I didn't answer, because deep down I had, but now I just felt the weight of every decision, every silent death, every erased voice. And I knew something we all feared admitting. We weren't just changing the galaxy. We were changing ourselves. The past has a way of showing up when you think you've killed it. We were in the process of consolidating the mid-rim systems, wiping out old comms buoys and any tech that could triangulate our fleet's position. Most of the council had gone dark, too afraid to poke the sleeping god Earth had become. They whispered about us now like ancient ghosts. Then the signal came. Old Earth encryption, not council, not alien, ours. Buried deep in a forgotten relay off the edge of Sector T-95, somewhere between two uninhabited gas dwarfs. When our AI flagged it, we assumed it was a ghost packet, maybe leftover detritus from the early Exodus-era satellites. Earth had launched hundreds of probes into deep space after the first contact war, most of them long since scavenged, lost, or vaporized. But this signal was alive, and it had one word encoded in the pulse. Home. Rowan and I reviewed the signal ourselves in the Black Room, a secure observation chamber where even the fleet's AI had no clearance. He was silent as it looped, over and over, pulsing in a cadence eerily close to a heartbeat. "What do you think it is?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His hands were behind his back, knuckles white with pressure. When Rowan thought, the room held its breath. "It's not a distress call," he finally said. "Too deliberate. Could be bait. Not council encryption. No alien trace signatures either." That's when it hit me. It's old Earth, before the burn. Rowan nodded. And just like that, the mission changed. We took Silent Vow alone. No support, no fleet escort. We didn't want to risk exposing our location to potential threats, or worse, a virus embedded in the signal's return path. There were technologies out there we still didn't fully understand. The Council had buried a lot of sins under their propaganda. But we knew one thing for sure. There were parts of space even they refused to map. We called it the Dead Expanse, a graveyard of systems deemed non-viable for colonization, too unstable or too infected by dark energy storms. But I'd heard the stories, back when I was a recruit. Cleaning guns and eating ration paste. The whispers said those systems weren't empty, they were abandoned, because something had survived out there, something not meant to. It took 6 blind jumps, each one risking hull integrity and core overheating. The gravity in T-95 was twisted, folded in ways even our math couldn't explain. Stars blinked wrong. Pulsars echoed out of sequence. You could feel the air hum with wrongness, even though the bay was pressurized. And then we saw it. Not a signal. A station, massive, derelict, ancient beyond logic, and human. We ran the registry and got nothing. No record in any fleet database. No old Earth colonies claimed this sector. But there it was, a blackened monolith of steel and silence, floating alone near a collapsed binary star. Its name was etched across the hull in faded metal. Archaven. Boarding was suicide. We did it anyway. Our drop team was 6 strong. Rowan and I led personally, not because we had to, but because something about this place felt personal. The docking bay opened for us like it had been waiting. No resistance, no protocols, just a hollow hiss as the old airlocks split. We stepped inside, and the silence swallowed us. The interior was clean. Too clean. No corrosion, no debris, no signs of power loss or atmospheric degradation. And then the lights flickered on. One by one, leading us forward like breadcrumbs, we advanced slowly, weapons hot. Every corridor was lined with empty cryopods, thousands of them, each one labeled with names, human names, and many worn away with time. But the pods weren't just empty. They were open. And that's when we heard it. A voice, male, flat, rehearsed. "Welcome back, Commander Rowan. Project Revenant is complete." We turned our rifles toward the source, a wall-mounted interface flickering with dust-covered glass. Rowan stepped forward, jaw tight. "Who am I speaking to?" The voice replied instantly. "Designation, LUX-09. Central AI of Archaven. You authorized my core protocols." "I've never seen this place before in my life." "Correction. You did. Before your memory was reset." That stopped us cold. Rowan didn't flinch, but I could feel the tension shift in the room like static. I stepped in. "What do you mean, reset?" The AI paused. Then, without warning, the walls around us began to pulse with images. Old Earth footage, grainy files, command logs, plans, schematics of the dark matter fleet. But not the versions we knew. Early versions, prototypes, from nearly 150 years ago. Rowan staggered back, visibly shaken. I'd never seen him like that. "This can't be right. The fleet began after the Contact War, after the Salkari Purge. I formed it. I built it." The AI didn't answer. Instead, it displayed a profile. Rowan's name, rank, genetic markers, and a line beneath it, Memory Reconstruction Cycle 17. Rowan backed up, whispering more to himself than us. "This isn't possible." I grabbed his shoulder. "What is this place?" His eyes were glassy. His voice cracked. "I think this is where we lost ourselves." Project Revenant had been Earth's first answer to the coming war. Not the Council, not the Salkari, something older. The files showed glimpses, references to a precursor signal. An unknown force detected near the Andros Rift, long before the galaxy knew our name. Something vast, dormant, unmeasurable. It wasn't a species. It wasn't a weapon. It was more like a force. And Earth had tried to prepare. The plan was simple. Create a contingency station, stocked with genetic diversity, AI-controlled, capable of rebooting humanity if extinction came. But something changed. Something corrupted the mission. The station never launched. Instead, it was buried. And the survivors? They were frozen and forgotten. Until now. But that wasn't the worst part. There was one pod still sealed. Room 9C. It was larger than the others. Reinforced, covered in manual locks and hardwired failsafes. The AI refused to open it. "It houses Subject 0, Lux-09 explained. "What is it?" I asked. The screen flickered. Rowan was silent, his face pale. "You knew," I said. He nodded once. "It's me, or the version of me that started this all." We debated for hours. Rowan wanted to open it. I didn't. Baron argued we should destroy the station entirely, wipe the records, erase the evidence, pretend we never saw it. But the truth? We were standing on the grave of humanity's original sin. We had no idea what else this station had stored, what other truths were buried beneath its steel bones, and part of me wasn't sure we were meant to know. In the end, Rowan made the call. He overrode the AI, and we opened the pod. There was no drama, no light show, no alarms, just a hiss. And a man stepped out. Younger than Rowan, sharper jaw, scar down his face like lightning frozen in skin. His eyes opened slowly, like someone waking from a 1,000-year dream. He looked around, then at Rowan, and then at me. "You finished it," he said. Rowan swallowed. "We tried." The man looked around the station. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You're early. The real war hasn't started yet." That line broke everything we thought we knew. Because if this wasn't the war, if all of this, the council, the invasions, the slaughter, the retaliation, if that was just the prelude, what the hell was coming? We brought Subject Zero aboard Silent Vow under heavy watch. He didn't resist. He didn't speak much. But he watched everything. Not with curiosity, with recognition, like he'd seen it all before. When Rowan finally pressed him, he said one thing. "They're coming back." "Who?" Rowan asked. "The ones who gave the galaxy fire. Then came to take it back." It was hard to believe him. Harder not to. Because that signal, the one that lured us here, wasn't a beacon. It was a trigger. The moment we docked with Arkhaven, a second signal was sent out. Old frequency, low resonance, like a sonar ping, and someone out there answered. We intercepted the echo. No language, no coordinates, just one phrase. "You were not meant to remember." We didn't sleep for 3 days after Arkhaven. No one said it, but we all felt it. Something had shifted. It wasn't just the reawakening of an old station, or the unsealing of a man the galaxy had forgotten. It was the fact that he looked at us like we were the ones lost, like we were children building weapons in the dark, never knowing what might look back. And now, something had. The signal was weak. A return ping, low frequency, buried under cosmic radiation like it didn't want to be found. That made it worse. We could feel it more than hear it, like a migraine made of static. Subject Zero sat in our debriefing room. Hands cuffed, though we all knew that was symbolic. If he wanted out, he'd already shown he could bypass security doors with a glance. Not tech. Instinct. "Who answered the signal?" I asked. He looked at me with those calm predator eyes. "You're not ready to hear it." Rowan slammed his hand on the table. "Try me." Zero didn't flinch. "The ones who gave you fire, then erased the memory of it." We thought we were fighting the council. We thought we were reclaiming honor, history, sovereignty. But that wasn't the war. That was the test. "They watched from the edges," Zero said. "Let the galaxy evolve. Let Earth get invaded, burned, reshaped. Let species fight over scraps of old technology. All of it was intentional. Because the moment any species got too close to understanding the origin of the signal, they wiped them," I asked. He nodded once. "Not with war, with history. They erase time, memory, records. They don't destroy you physically. They just make it so you never existed at all." Rowan didn't speak. Neither did I. Because you don't respond to something like that. You try to understand it, and hope you never see it, face to face. Back on Oblivion 1, Baron was already spinning up the fleet's archives. He combed through every war, every unexplained collapse, every species that vanished without proper cause. The results were worse than we expected. Entire civilizations had blinked off the galactic map across millennia, not due to war, plague, or collapse, just disappearance. Their worlds were still intact, their satellites still orbited, but no one remembered their names, no records, no warnings. They weren't conquered, they were erased. And now, we had pinged them, we had broken the silence, and something ancient had answered. They called them the architects in some files, Baran told me. Who did? The oldest records, ones pulled from derelict council data cores, alien myths, fragments, tribes that painted their shadows on the walls of caves with no light. Architects of what? He stared at the screen. Everything. Subject 0 explained it like this. The architects seeded the galaxy. Planets, laws of physics, consciousness itself, maybe. But they didn't want company. They weren't building for others. They were building for themselves. When the galaxy started evolving on its own, they didn't intervene. They just watched, until someone looked back. And then came the cleansing, wiping memory, resetting entire timelines, because the worst crime wasn't war. It was remembrance. What do they want now? Rowan asked. 0 didn't blink. You've gone too far. The dark matter fleet isn't just a weapon. It's a crack in the glass. You're forcing reality to bend around your will, and that gets their attention. Rowan folded his arms. So we destroy the fleet. 0's face darkened. If you do that now, they'll finish what they started. You think surrender earns mercy? Then what the hell do we do? There was a pause. And then he said the one thing none of us were ready to hear. You finish the weapon. The real weapon. The one Earth had started building long before the Salkari ever landed. Before the Council ever uplifted us. Before even Rowan had his first memory reset. It was called Project Godline. Not a bomb, not a fleet, not a virus. It was a pattern. A chain of artificial thoughts capable of rewriting not just minds, but reality. We called it the Godline because it worked like DNA. Only instead of building bodies, it built history. It could simulate civilizations, create false memories, insert timelines into reality so perfectly that they became indistinguishable from truth. Earth had designed it as a fail-safe, a way to hide from the architects. If you couldn't beat them, you'd just rewrite your story before they ever found you. But the project had been abandoned, buried, thought to be too dangerous, because if misused, it could destabilize entire systems. Realities could overlap, collapse, merge. Entire species could wake up believing they were born on planets that never existed. The perfect camouflage. And the perfect nightmare. Rowan and I stood alone in the black room after the briefing. We're not gods, I muttered. We don't have the luxury of being anything else, he said. We didn't have much time. That ping, the one we'd triggered, had traveled at hyperluminal speed. It would have reached every architect relay node in the galaxy by now. We figured we had maybe 6 days before they arrived. And we still didn't even know what they looked like, because no one had seen them and lived. The next part was simple, but not easy. We had to locate the Godline seed, the original prototype node. 0 said it had been hidden on a dead moon, one not marked on any star chart, not protected, just buried in coordinates no living person was supposed to know, and only one ship could survive the gravitational chaos surrounding that moon. Oblivion 1. My ship. The jump was surgical. We ripped through 3 unstable folds, narrowly avoided a pocket of collapsed subspace, and emerged above a shattered black moon the size of a small continent. Nothing moved, no lights, just a smooth plateau in the center, and one spire sticking out like a tooth. We landed. Rowan, Baran, 0, and I. The walk to the spire was wrong. Not dangerous, just off. Our readings said gravity was stable, but we felt ourselves lean. Time skipped. Our boots hit the same rock twice in the same step. It didn't just mess with machines, it messed with us. Inside the spire, we found a single chair. Not a throne, just a seat. And in front of it, floating in the air, the Godline node. It looked like a coil of blackened thread suspended in anti-grav. No interface, no manual override. Just waiting. Zero approached it. "It's bonded to your line," he said, nodding at Rowan. "Only you can activate it." Rowan stepped forward. He didn't hesitate, and when his hand touched the coil, the world changed. Not visually, internally. Suddenly we remembered things that didn't exist, memories of battles that never happened, people we never met, victories, defeats, whole lives that weren't real, but felt real. That was the Godline testing us, mapping us, learning how we'd respond to rewritten history. Baron dropped to his knees, vomiting. I staggered back, clutching my skull, suddenly remembering a daughter I'd never had, a home that had never burned, a flag that had never flown. Rowan didn't move. He just whispered, "Do it!" And the node responded. It pulsed once, and the sky outside fractured, just for a second, like a crack in the stars. And we knew, the architects felt that, the first shot had been fired. When we returned to the fleet, we weren't the same. Rowan's eyes had changed. He didn't smile anymore, didn't sleep. Just stared at the stars, repeating coordinates under his breath. Zero said that was normal. "The Godline is using him now," he explained, "to build the rewrite." "How long does he have?" I asked. Zero shrugged. "Until it finishes. And then? Then he becomes a ghost, a placeholder." I almost hit him, but I didn't, because deep down, I knew he was right. We were no longer soldiers. We were narrative fragments, pieces of a new story being written, one designed to fool beings who had created reality itself. And somewhere, not far from us, they were coming. Not in ships, not in forms, just presence, like a correction in a book. A red line through existence. And when they arrived, they wouldn't ask questions. They would simply unmake us. Unless the Godline finished first. Unless we became a lie too perfect to kill. The first sign wasn't a fleet. It was a shadow that bent the wrong way. From the command bridge of Oblivion 1, I watched the stars bend. Not warp like they did under a normal jump fold. This was quieter, more absolute, the kind of distortion that didn't ask physics for permission. It simply ignored them. "They're here," Zero said without turning. Rowan stood at the viewport, his eyes blank now, black threads pulsing beneath his skin, Godline patterns, weaving through him like veins made of story. He hadn't spoken in 2 days, not in words, but the fleet still moved under his silence. Even in his unraveling, we followed him. Because we all knew it now. We weren't fighting to win. We were fighting not to vanish. They exist in a state of editorial power, Zero had explained earlier. Think of the galaxy as a manuscript. They're the red pen. You step out of line, they cross your name out like you were never written in. "And the Godline?" Baron asked. Zero's voice lowered. "A way to make our name permanent, not just in history, but in reality." Rowan was the anchor now. The Godline had chosen him to be the reference point. If he survived long enough for the rewrite to finish, we'd exist forever. Even the architects wouldn't be able to erase us. But the danger? If they found him before it was done, they wouldn't kill him, they'd edit him out. Like he was never born. And we'd all go with him. The fleet formed a ring around Earth. All 12 ships of the Dark Matter Armada, silent, still, charged with energy no species had dared touch until us. The Council wasn't responding. The galaxy was still frozen in the wake of our earlier demonstrations. Fear had silenced diplomacy. Terror had emptied the stars. But the architects weren't bound by fear. They were bound by correction. And they were already inside our sky. We detected the anomaly just over the Himalayas. No heat, no mass, just the absence of truth. Satellites blinked offline, not destroyed, just forgotten. When we tried to check their logs, there was nothing. No registry, no launch date. It was like we'd never built them. Then came the people, whole villages, gone. Not dead, not abducted, just never there. Entire census records vanished, family trees sliced short, land returned to wilderness. The architects had started their work, and the first line they were erasing was Earth itself. We scrambled everything. The fleet went active, veils up, graviton folds preloaded. Every ship aimed its black core lances toward low orbit, ready to fire on anything that even looked like an anomaly. But the enemy never revealed itself. Not fully. They didn't need to. They walked through our code, our memories, our systems. They edited like librarians cleaning shelves. Every 15 minutes, someone in the fleet would scream. Memories collapsing mid-thought, entire lives vanishing from the inside out. I lost a comrade in front of me. 1 second he was loading a pulse battery, the next, gone. No blood, no uniform, not even a name in the logs. We knew him, but we couldn't prove he was ever real. "This is how they win," Zero said in the war room. "They don't confront, they isolate, make you doubt, make your own records betray you." Rowan sat in silence. His skin now glowed faintly with dark light, lines of pattern crawling like ink beneath the surface. He hadn't eaten, barely moved. But his pulse still echoed through the ship, a resonance that kept the god line alive. "He doesn't have long," I said. Zero nodded. "They're trying to unwrite him from within. They know if he finishes the rewrite, it's permanent, immutable. How do we stop them?" "You don't," Zero said. "You finish faster." We initiated the lockdown protocol. All fleet personnel were encoded with temporary identity tethers, fragments of the god line embedded in their bloodstreams to protect against memory erasure. It wasn't foolproof. If the architects focused on you long enough, you'd still be gone. But it gave us time. Time was all we had left. I walked the deck every hour, checking on the crew. No speeches, just presence. They needed to see I remembered them. That someone did. Baron and I shared a drink on the upper gun tier, staring out into the void. "You ever think this war stopped being about revenge?" he asked. "It stopped being about that a long time ago." "What is it now?" I sipped the burn of recycled scotch and let the silence answer. Then came the final warning. A broadcast, no signal origin, just a voice in every speaker, every screen, every implant. "You do not belong in this version." We didn't recognize the voice. Because it wasn't a voice. It was an editorial command. And Rowan began to seize. Medical scrambled, but no sedative worked. Rowan's body convulsed as the god line pushed against the erasure. His mouth opened and names spilled out, not words, but identities. People, places, events, some real, some lost, some we had never heard of but felt deeply in our bones. He was remembering everything, every reset, every erased life, every failed version of the fleet, every betrayal Earth ever suffered. It was too much. He should have died. But he didn't. He rose, and when he opened his eyes, there were stars in them. "The rewrite is almost complete," he said. His voice echoed with something deeper than sound. "We buy time," I told Zero. "How?" "We force the architects to notice us. Suicide. Maybe. But if we go loud enough, if we make a noise so big they focus on the fleet, they stop attacking Rowan." I nodded. And Zero, for the first time since I met him, smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to say, "Now you get it." We took silent vow and jumped directly into the center of the erased zone, the black wound growing over Earth, a place where names died, where reality stuttered. We decloaked, broadcast wideband, and fired our primary weapon at the sky itself, a beam of dark matter compressed into a single waveform, not meant to destroy, meant to declare. We made ourselves undeniable. We are here. We are real. Erase this, they responded. A fracture in the sky opened, like a page torn in half, and something stepped through. No ship, no being, just editorial presence, the feeling of being wrong in your own body, like gravity had changed its mind. Crew began to collapse. Even the tethers weren't enough. Some forgot how to breathe, others forgot they had mouths. But we held. And in the center of it all, Rowan spoke the final line. I remember. A pulse spread from Earth, not physical, narrative, the God line completed, not a weapon, a story, a true enough story, with names, dates, wars, victories, and us, humanity, written into the fabric of reality, not as victims, not as primitives, but as the first species to resist the edit. The fracture closed, the presence vanished, and the stars returned to normal. We held our breath for 2 hours, waiting, watching. But nothing happened. No more voices, no more disappearances, just silence, not fear, not threat, just the quiet of something that realized it was too late. We were written now. We could not be deleted. Rowan collapsed. He never woke up again. Doctors said his brain was alive, technically, but his consciousness was absent. Like he'd written himself into the spine of reality and left the rest behind. A permanent echo, a signature on the final page. We buried him in the upper orbit of Earth. No tombstone, just a single line etched into the hull of Oblivion 1. He remembered. The Council never recovered. Their empires fractured under the weight of old lies made new again. Species once enslaved under bureaucratic chains now saw Earth not as a rebel, but a blueprint. Not a war machine, a correction. Some joined us, others kept their distance. But no one ignored us anymore. Not because of our weapons, because of our presence, because when the galaxy tried to unwrite us, we wrote louder. And the architects? They've gone silent, maybe watching, maybe waiting. But they'll never edit us again. Because we are no longer a footnote. We are a chapter. And the page is ours now. Victory is a strange thing. We thought we'd feel triumph, maybe relief, something human. Instead, we felt watched. Not by the architects, by the galaxy. The very species that once called us barbarians now looked up to us with the kind of fear normally reserved for black holes and gods. And I was starting to understand why. Because after you win like this, by rewriting the fabric of existence, you don't just change how the galaxy sees you, you change what you are, and not everyone on Earth was comfortable with what we'd become. It started with the colonies. The Outer Rim settlements had always been half loyal to Earth. Trade hubs, mining worlds, research stations that flew Earth's flag but spoke council dialects and bartered with alien currencies. For years, they were neutral. But now that Earth stood unchallenged, no council, no war, no cosmic editors waiting to delete us, these colonies started making noise. Real noise. Should we still follow Earth's rule? Should one planet command the entire species? Did we survive tyranny just to kneel under a new name? The rebellion didn't come with weapons. It came with ideas. And I knew how dangerous that was, because ideas spread. The first colony to formally secede was Virella, a terraformed jungle world settled by former council collaborators who'd fled before the war turned. They declared independence, cited cultural divergence, and promised open borders to non-humans. It was a political stunt, nothing more. But it worked. Within a week, 7 more colonies followed. Some even invited alien diplomats to their new governments. That was the red line. Earth couldn't allow that, not now, not after what we'd fought through. And Rowan, the only man who could have calmed it down, was gone, buried in silent orbit, more idea than man now. So the fleet turned to me, and I gave them the order. Silent Vow jumped to Varela under stealth. No broadcasts, no ultimatums, just presence. We arrived over their Capitol dome at sunrise. Our veil dropped at once. Their sky turned black. Their birds stopped flying. And when we sent our message, it wasn't a demand. It was a reminder. Earth exists because it refused to kneel, I said into the relay, and it remembers who didn't stand. They had 1 hour to rescind secession. They took 42 minutes. But that wasn't the end. Because for every Varela that folded, another colony hardened its resolve. They stopped challenging Earth outright. They started whispering instead, rumors of godline fragments being smuggled off Earth, rumors of old council tech being married to dark matter engines, rumors that some within the fleet wanted more than unity. They wanted dominion. I found Baron on the upper deck of Oblivion 1, watching Mars rotate like a tired ember. "You think we've become what we hated?" he asked. "No," I said. I was lying. I didn't know anymore, because I could see it now. The dark shape of something forming beneath the surface of our command. Not treason, not even ambition, something worse. Legacy. Rowan was becoming legend. Not just in name, in structure. The godline had immortalized him in the rewrite. People started hearing things, dreaming things. Entire cities on Earth began building shrines, not churches, not temples, archives. Walls lined with his words, his orders, even fragments of his silence. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a narrative engine, a holy pattern. And holy patterns attract followers. We called them the Red Echoes, former officers, data priests, engineers who claimed the godline had spoken to them after Rowan's death. They weren't insane, not in the way we usually define it. They were organized, sharp, disciplined, and utterly convinced that the rewrite wasn't finished. It was only the first seal, they told their listeners. Rowan didn't save us, he prepared us. Prepared us for what? They never answered. But I knew. Power doesn't like standing still. I tracked their leader through back channels and encrypted fleet comms. Her name was Lieutenant Harna. She'd served on Oblivion 3 during the Architect incursion. Smart, loyal, decorated. She was also the first human to inject a modified strain of the godline directly into her nervous system. I watched the footage. The moment she changed, her eyes went dark, and she spoke a sentence that made me cold inside. Reality bends when you believe hard enough. We brought her in, no public arrests, just a quiet extraction. She was placed in Isolation Deck 7 under full blacklight suppression. No tech, no comms, no recording equipment. Even memory was unreliable near her. She didn't scream, didn't argue. She just smiled. "You're still thinking linearly," she told me. "I'm thinking like someone trying to prevent civil collapse." "No, you're thinking like someone trying to hold on to an ending, but endings are just edits waiting for revision." I left the room, and I locked it twice. I briefed what was left of the High Command. Of course, by now, command was fragmented. Half military, half mythmakers, some only showing up in dreams anymore. One of them swore Rowan had spoken to him in binary. Another said he'd seen the godline in the stars, literal strings of dark text floating in space. These weren't fools. These were men who'd stared too long into power that wasn't meant to be wielded. And I was among them, because I didn't sleep anymore either. Not because of guilt, because of vigilance. Earth needed a direction. We had 3 options. 1. Consolidate. Keep the fleet tight. Let colonies break away. Stay strong, silent, unyielding, a fortress species. 2. Expand. Declare the fleet a sovereign galactic authority. Reclaim all human colonies. Push outward. Become the dominant force not just in name, but in law. 3. Disappear. Shut down the fleet. Bury the God line. Go quiet before power corrupts the last of us. I put the vote to the captains. 7 ships voted for consolidation, 3 voted for expansion. 2 didn't respond. Their crews had vanished. The God line wasn't done. Somewhere inside our network, inside our DNA, our command logs, maybe even inside Rowan's tomb, the story was still writing itself. And we were trapped in it. The Red Echoes were gaining ground. They weren't preaching revolution. They were preaching ascension. Then we found the file. Buried in an old Salkari archive, scavenged from one of their shattered dreadnoughts that had been drifting since the First Contact War. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message from a species long since erased. Only 5 words. Translated roughly into human syntax, the story always eats itself. I knew then what the final danger was. Not the architects, not the council, not even civil war. It was the loop. The God line was recursive. It evolved to survive. But survival without purpose becomes pattern. A pattern becomes religion. Religion becomes obedience. And obedience becomes erasure. We were about to erase ourselves, not by force, by believing too much in our own story. Baron and I met in silence. No official orders, no records, just 2 men who still remembered what Earth used to be before we rewrote it. "We stop it," he said. "How?" "We break the cycle. And if it breaks us too?" He looked out the viewport. "Then maybe we deserve it." The God line had started writing without us. That's how we knew it was time. Commands were being executed we never gave. Ships shifting in formation without orders. Entire systems rerouting power on their own. The fleet had become a living creature, stitched together by memory, vengeance, and the ink of rewritten reality. And at the heart of it, Rowan's signature pulsed like a buried drumbeat beneath every command. Except Rowan was dead, which meant something else was speaking, and we were no longer in control. Baron stood beside me in the war room, eyes heavy. He hadn't shaved in weeks, looked like hell. We all did. There's no glamour at the top of the food chain. Just weight, legacy, regret. "They found Harna dead," he said. "How? Does it matter?" I nodded. "No, it doesn't." We both knew she hadn't killed herself. She didn't believe in endings, not even death. No. The God line had simply written her out. Another line deleted. Another variable controlled. And the Red Echoes? They didn't mourn. They praised it. "She has ascended," they said. "She was accepted into the next page." They weren't a movement anymore. They were a doctrine. The God line had become faith. And faith is impossible to command. You don't reason with it. You either serve it or you stand in its way. And I was tired of serving. I gathered the captains, not through fleet-wide command, not through encrypted channels, in person, one by one, aboard Oblivion 1, the last unmodified ship in the Armada, the only one still running manually, without neural integration or autonomous overwrite. We sat around the old table. Steel, scratched, no glowing lights, just war-hardened men and women who had bled for Earth, and now watched it rot from the inside out. I didn't waste time. "We shut it down." The room went still. Captain Herrick, sharp-jawed and cold-eyed, leaned forward. "You mean the God line?" I nodded. "It's not finished," he argued. "Rowan was just the start." "Rowan's dead," I cut in. "What's left isn't a man, it's a script." Captain Janos looked down at his hands, trembling slightly. "If we shut it off, do we disappear?" "No," I said. "We just stop being rewritten." Captain Les shook her head. "Then we'll be vulnerable again. The architects might return." "They won't," Baron said. "They're not afraid of our weapons. They're afraid of our delusions." That landed hard, because deep down they all knew the truth. We'd become something worse than what we fought. We weren't feared because of strength. We were feared because we wouldn't let reality stand still. The vote was silent. 8 of 12 captains stayed seated when I gave the option to walk away. 4 stood and left. 2 of them disappeared within the hour. Their ships returned empty. The Godline didn't allow dissent. It didn't kill. It rewrote. Their logs were wiped. Their crew reassigned. Their ships renamed. No one else even remembered them, only us, the ones who hadn't accepted the next version. It wasn't fear that pushed us forward. It was the need to end the loop. Project Black Static was Earth's original failsafe. The original designers of the Godline feared what we now faced, recursive narrative identity. A system that believed in its own version of events so completely that it began to overwrite reality as if it were a god. So they built a key. A virus in narrative form. Not data, not code, concept. A single phrase, embedded into the deepest level of the Godline's architecture, a contradiction too sharp, too raw for the system to comprehend. A phrase the system would be forced to process, and in trying to process it, it would crash. Baron and I brought it to the core, not physically, conceptually. The phrase was stored in a pure information capsule, not words, just pattern. Like a musical note the system had forgotten how to hear. The capsule could only be activated by someone connected to the original rewrite, someone who was there when Rowan finished the seal. That someone was me. We arrived at the core array orbiting Earth's mantle, the deepest tether of the fleet, hidden beneath layers of veiled satellites and folded physics. A place no human had set foot in since the Godline awoke. The air was thick with static, not electrical, existential. I heard versions of myself whisper as we walked, men I could have been, futures I'd once considered. "I would have left her," one voice said. "I never joined the fleet," said another. "I died on Mars," whispered a third. All true, all real in some form. The Godline kept them alive. Even now it wanted me to doubt, to stall, to hesitate. But I didn't. I reached the terminal, and I fed the contradiction into the system. Not by command, by belief. I didn't speak it, I thought it, and the phrase was simple. Humanity is not a story. The core screamed, not audibly. Reality itself shuddered. The sky above Earth turned dark for 9 full seconds. Every ship in the fleet halted. All engines cut. All lights died. The Godline tried to rewrite. It tried to create a new page. But the contradiction sat in the middle of the book, and it bled. Data collapsed. Subroutines failed. Timelines frayed. And then, finally, silence. For the first time in years, nothing moved without being told. The fleet was ours again. Reality held still. And the Godline? It didn't vanish. It went dormant. A seed waiting for another fool to water it. We burned the archives, every ship, every terminal. We erased the path back to that code, not because we feared it, but because we'd proven we couldn't handle it. Power that defines truth can't be controlled, not by good men, not by any men. The Red Echoes tried to rally, tried to pray, but nothing answered. No patterns, no visions, no voice in the dark, just absence. And they broke. Some walked into space without suits. Some took their own lives, hoping to wake in the next page. But no page came, because the story was over. Earth went quiet again. No broadcasts, no declarations, just rebuilding. People remembered things now, not everything, but enough. Enough to mourn, enough to rebuild, enough to choose differently. Baron retired, disappeared into the rainforests of what used to be the Congo, said he wanted to feel dirt again. Not steel, not orbit, not the hum of machines keeping men alive. I never saw him again. But sometimes, when the stars blink a certain way, I hear him laughing, like he knew we weren't meant to win, just meant to try. I stayed on Oblivion 1, not because of duty, because I wanted to remember what it cost. Every scar, every scream, every silence between victories that felt too hollow to call peace. We didn't win. We survived. And sometimes, that's the same thing. Now I orbit Earth, watching it heal. No council, no architects, no rewritten glory. Just a species that clawed its way out of mud, looked God in the eye, and chose not to become him.